In this video, I wanted to see if I could beat a hardcore Nuzlocke of Pokemon White with only Gym Leader Pokemon. Now, instead of just limiting my encounters to Gym Leader's Pokemon, I've decided to make this run a bit more interesting. So in this run, every time I beat a Gym Leader, I'll be randomly receiving one of the Pokemon from that Gym Leader. To make this even more challenging, I won't be evolving these Pokemon either. That means this run could be insanely hard if I get Pokemon like Dwebble or Unpheasant. I'm really gonna need luck on my side if I want to win this run, because in a Pokemon Nuzlocke, if a Pokemon faints, it's considered dead and must be released. The rest of the rules to this run can be seen on screen now and in the description. I've also added 2 other rules that are going to make this run even more difficult. Firstly, I won't be EV training any of my Pokemon, meaning if I get a bad Pokemon from a Gym Leader, it's going to stay bad. And lastly, I won't be using any setup moves. With the rules out the way, let's jump right into this run. One quick thing first though, I'm now going to do that YouTuber thing where I point out that only about 12% of all the people that watch my videos are subscribed, so I'd really appreciate it if you enjoy my content. Remember to hit that subscribe button, and if you enjoyed the video, remember to leave a like. Now on with the video. So first things first, we have to talk about starters. Obviously, my only encounters are coming from defeating Gym Leaders, so what do I use before I've beaten my first Gym Leader? Well, while I could just keep the Snivy Professor Juniper gives me, I've decided that's the easy way out. Instead, as this run is about building up a team by defeating Gym Leaders, I decide I might as well start at the bottom of the barrel, and of course, you don't get more bottom of the barrel than Patrat. So after catching Plane and fighting 3 separate rival fights after the 2 I've already done, it's time for our first gym fight. Now, because we picked Snivy, we'll be fighting Chili. Chili has the weakest elemental monkey, so let's go see if Plane has what it takes to get us over this first hurdle. So I start with Plane, and Chili starts with Lillipup. Plane is immediately able to get off a really strong tackle, while Lillipup just goes for a workup. Now this first gym fight involves a lot of luck, because both of Chili's Pokemon know workup. This means I could get lucky and have Chili just use workup and not even attack my Pokemon, or he could use workup a couple of times and then end this run before it even starts. So after praying to the RNG gods, I go for another tackle that literally leaves Lillipup on 1 HP, and then Lillipup goes for a bite. Luckily, after only 1 workup, this bite doesn't do too much. Chili then heals with a potion on the next turn, letting Plane land another tackle to bring the fluffy puppy back into the red. Plane is then able to outspeed and KO on the next turn. Only took 1 bite there, so we should be in a good position to win this. Chili then sends out his Turd Monkey, which immediately goes for a workup, while Plane hits back with a tackle that does slightly less than half. The stupid Turd Monkey then hits Plane with a strong Incinerate that does a worrying amount and also burns up our equipped Oranberry. Plane is able to hit back with another tackle that brings Pansear into the red, meaning it all comes down to this next turn. If this monkey crits, we lose, so I hold my breath as the second Incinerate connects, and Plane survives, meaning he's able to land 1 last tackle for the victory. That was a bit too close, but we managed to beat the literal poo monkey and earn our first gym badge. Nice job, Plane. We've gotten our first gym badge, meaning we've earned our next teammate for the run. To make this a bit more exciting than a 50-50 roll between the Turd Monkey and the puppy, I've decided to add the 2 slightly less poo monkeys to the wheel as well. So let's see who we're getting. And the wheel has chosen Pansage. Pansage is great, while Panpour might be slightly stronger. Having access to Leech Seed will make Rainbow a really useful support tool. So welcome to the team, Rainbow. It's then a quick trip towards the second gym leader, Lenora. I decide to pick up the Rock Smash TM to give myself a slightly higher chance of being able to take down Lenora's normal types. It's then time for the second gym leader, and of course I get ambushed by another rival fight, this time against N. He proves to be a cakewalk though, so after watching him run off crying, shouting about being friends with a legendary Pokemon, it's time for the second gym. I do also manage to evolve Plane before this fight into the creepy as hell Watchog. So like the first gym fight against Chili, I'm going to have to rely on a little bit of luck here, because if Lenora lands too many takedowns, I probably will just lose. So I start with Rainbow to take an Intimidate, and Lenora starts with Herdia. Rainbow immediately outspeeds and lands a Leech Seed, and Herdia misses a takedown. Good start. With Herdia seeded, I immediately switch into Plane, and Herdia misses again. I then go through a Detect to get slightly more chip damage from Leech Seed before going through a Confuse Ray. Herdia does break through the confusion, but luckily it just goes to Leer. I then Detect again through another turn before going through a Hypnosis, which misses. Luckily though, Herdia just hurts himself in confusion. I'm starting to feel like I'm just bullying this dog at this point. It hasn't even landed 1 attack. I know that Lenora will heal on the next turn, so I go through a Hypnosis, which misses again. Blind leading the blind in this fight so far. I then go through a Hypnosis for a third time, and it misses again. Like, I've got to win one of these coin flips eventually, right? Luckily, instead of attacking, Herdia just goes for another Leer. At -2 defense, I don't want to leave Plane in, so after stalling for another turn with Detect, I switch into Rainbow. Of course, on the switch, Herdia misses another takedown. This is just getting a bit silly at this point. I then switch back into Plane, and Herdia actually lands a takedown. Pour one out for my boy Herdia. He put so much effort into that one attack. Amusingly, that's all he got to do, because after stalling for another turn, a single cut is enough to finish off the blind puppy. Last, the Lenora is her own Watchhog, meaning it's Watchhog versus Watchhog. To be honest, this might be the ugliest Pokemon battle in history. So after detecting through a turn to avoid a boosted retaliation, I go through a Confuse Ray, and Watchdog lands a Retaliate that does a huge amount. I then go through a Hail Mary Hypnosis that I really hope lands this time, and luckily it does. Fourth time lucky is a thing, isn't it? Plane is then able to get off one cut while Watchdog stays asleep, but on the next turn, after getting off another cut, Watchdog wakes up and lands a second Retaliate that brings Plane down to 4 HP. Okay, coming down to the wire, but we can still win this. Plane can't survive another hit, so I switch into Rainbow, and Watchdog breaks through his confusion and lands another strong Retaliate. Luckily, it does just above half, meaning if Watchdog low rolls on the next attack, Rainbow can survive. So I click Vine Whip, and Watchdog hits himself in confusion. That means Rainbow is able to finish off the Watchdog with a single Vine Whip, winning us our second gym badge. Another insanely close gym fight there, but we pushed through. That means we get another encounter, and well, I've already got a Watchdog in Plane, so it's not exactly a shocking revelation that our magic wheel decides that I'm getting a Herdia. Balance has access to the best ability in the game in Intimidate, and can hit decently hard, so he'll become a welcome addition to the team. It's then off to the big city, and I beeline straight for the Eviolite. The Eviolite was an item introduced in Generation 5 that greatly increases the defense and special defenses of any unevolved Pokemon. Half my team won't be evolving this run, making this item probably the most useful in the game. With the Eviolite acquired, it's time for our third gym fight against Burgh, and this one should be a lot simpler than the last two. So I start with Balance, and Burgh starts with Whirlipede. Balance is able to get off a really strong takedown before being hit with the world's weakest Poison Tail, Eviolite already putting in work. Balance is then able to take down the strange looking cheese wheel with a bite and a single Retaliate. Easy. Second for Burgh is Dwebble, and I kinda want to keep Balance and Plane healthy for Burgh's ace, so I switch into Rainbow. On the switch, Rainbow takes a weak smackdown. Rainbow is then able to land a Leech Seed before being hit with a Struggle Bug that thankfully doesn't do a lot. A Grass Gem boosted Seed Bomb then brings the Dwebble to below half, and Dwebble retaliates with a Sand attack. Leech Seed annoyingly brings Dwebble low enough to where on the next turn, Burgh heals the Rock Bug with a Hyper Potion as Rainbow misses a Seed Bomb. Rainbow then misses a second Seed Bomb and gets hit with another Sand attack. Rainbow then misses through a third time and gets hit with another Sand attack. Okay, this is getting slightly silly, so I switch into Balance. On the switch, Balance takes a Struggle Bug, but then is able to hit back with 2 more crunches that just miss the KO. Of course, this puts Dwebble back into range where Burgh heals again, meaning it does take many more crunches, but eventually the Dwebble does thaw. Last the Burgh is Leavanny, who hits really hard with Razor Leaf. Balance is healthy enough to where he should survive one hit, however, so I stay in as Burgh fires off a stupidly strong Razor Leaf. Balance survives though, and is able to land a takedown that does a good amount. I then decide I want Plane to come in and finish this thing off, but I don't want him to have to take a Razor Leaf on the switch, as Razor Leaf has a high crit chance. So I decide to switch through Rainbow, and surprisingly, Leavanny just goes for a Protect. Rainbow now baits the weaker Struggle Bug, so I switch into Plane, who takes a much weaker hit than he would had I just switched him straight in. Plane is then able to get off the strong Retaliate, while Leavanny only lowers his speed with String Shot. Leavanny then wastes time with a Protect before landing a Razor Leaf that I think would have KO'd had it crit, but luckily it didn't, meaning Plane is able to win our third gym badge of the run with a Retaliate. That was a much easier gym fight than the first two, and as a reward we get our next encounter, which turns out to be a Dwebble. Now Hive should be really useful against the next gym leader, as it's full of annoying flying types, and he has some good physical bulk, so at least now I've got one kind of tanky Pokemon to play with. It's then time to head off through the desert resort towards our next gym badge. Of course, this means even more rival fights, but once those are pushed aside, we can grab 2 very useful TMs before continuing on. In this random house, we can grab the Dig TM, which should make Elesa's Zebstrika much easier to deal with, and then we can quickly go and grab the Rock Tomb TM, which should make handling Elesa's other 2 Pokemon, Emolga, slightly more bearable. With those 2 TMs acquired, and a weirdly awkward Ferris wheel ride with N out the way, it's time for our 4th gym fight. I've decided to start with Hive, who I've given the Eviolite, and Elesa starts with the first of her 2 Emolgas. Emolga immediately lands a Volt Switch, which does a worrying amount. Hive is then able to set up a Stealth Rock. Now, with Stealth Rock up, every time Elesa Volt Switches her Emolgas in, they take 1/4 of their HP in damage. Because of this, I decide to use Hive and Rainbow, both who won't be much help in the rest of this fight, to bait the Emolgas into constantly Volt Switching. So I switch into Rainbow, who resists a Volt Switch, and then switch into Hive, who resists an Aerial Ace. I then keep switching between Hive and Rainbow until both Rainbow and Hive are brought into the red. With the Emolgas weakened, however, I should be able to finish them both off with Balance. So I switch into Balance on a weak Quick Attack. Perfect. So Emolga goes through another Volt Switch into the second Emolga, who is immediately KO'd by a Rock Tomb. The first Emolga then comes back out and is brought to 25% HP. I then make a massive misplay and go for Crunch rather than Dig. I should have gone for Dig because I know that Zebstrika would be the one taking the hit, but instead I land a Crunch into the Spiky Horse, which at least does a decent amount. Balance is now low enough to where I'm unsure if he can survive another hit, so I switch into Plane. On the switch, Plane takes a hard Spark that luckily does less than 50%. Okay, that should mean I win here. Plane will survive one more hit, get off a Dig for the KO, and then Emolga can come in and KO itself on Stealth Rock. So I go through a Dig as Zebstrika lands a second Spark, and of course, Plane gets fully paralyzed. Victory was so close, but I think that bit of bad luck might have just lost me the run. All of my Pokemon are too low to switch into, so I have no choice but to let Plane go down here as Zebstrika lands a Quick Attack for the KO. Rest in peace, my long creepy meerkat. I then send in Balance, hoping that maybe he can survive the hit, but unfortunately Zebstrika lands another Volt Switch, KOing Balance. Emolga then comes back in and surprisingly survives. I guess Stealth Rock wasn't doing exactly 25% like I thought, not that it matters, as Hive and Rainbow are very quickly finished off by Elesa's Flying Rat. That's the end of attempt 1. We very nearly pulled off a win there, but unfortunately we got unlucky due to getting paralysed at the worst possible time. Serves me right for not playing around that. Oh well, with this loss we have no choice but to carry on, and now I'm more determined than ever. On with attempt 2 then, and we're all the way back at the start of the game, and despite my determination to push through and win this challenge, unfortunately the game has other ideas. This time I'm battling Cress as our first gym leader, and unfortunately his monkey is just straight up better than the Poo Monkey, and this time around Plane isn't quite as strong, meaning he's just not able to quite pull off the win, and we end up losing. Luckily, attempt 2 didn't get too far, so it doesn't take too long before I'm once again facing the first gym leader, and this time Plane is able to pull off a win. Amusingly, I actually get Rainbow back, meaning it's starting to look like attempt 1 again. The first major difference in this attempt, however, is that after defeating Burgh for the second time, we don't get Hive the Dwebble, we get Burgh's ace, Leavanny. Now, obviously, Forest is much better than Hive in pretty much every way, but it does mean I had less counters against Elesa, which doesn't fill me with confidence. Oh well, gotta work with the cards I was drawn, so let's go get some revenge. This time around, without Hive, I decide to be much more aggressive, so I start with Balance, who I've given an Eviolite, while Elesa once again starts with her first Emolga. Emolga immediately lands a weak Volt Switch, before Balance is able to land a Rock Tomb that does slightly less than half. Balance then takes a second Volt Switch before missing a Rock Tomb. Right, can't miss too many more of those or I'm gonna get screwed over again. Luckily, after taking another Volt Switch, Balance lands a second Rock Tomb for the KO. Okay, 1 down, 1 to go. Emolga then comes back out, and this time I make the correct play. I know Emolga will go for Volt Switch, so I go through a Dig. Volt Switch does a huge amount into Balance, but luckily a Dig into Zebstrika does over half. I assume there's no way this spiky Nightmare Horse will go for a Flame Charge, and Forest might outspeed, so I switch into Forest. Thoris takes a spark that luckily doesn't do too much. To my horror, however, on the next turn, Zebstrika outspeeds and lands a 4 times effective flame charge, and somehow it doesn't get the KO. I have no idea how that didn't take Thoris out, but she survives, meaning she's able to land a Grasp Gem boosted Razor Leaf for the KO. Last for Elesa is her last Emolga, and with Plane on full HP, I should be fine here, so I switch on a weak Aerial Ace. Plane then has to land a really strong Volt Switch before landing a Confuse Ray. Emolga then hurts himself in Confusion as I go through a Hypnosis, which of course misses. Probably should have gone for damage there, if I'm honest. I then decide to go through a Retaliate, and Emolga lands another Volt Switch that leaves Plane on 8 HP. Bit too close there, but thankfully Plane survives and is able to get off good damage. But now I'm in a bit of an awkward spot. The only Pokemon I have left who is healthy is Rainbow, but that does mean I'm going to have him survive an Aerial Ace here. So I switch in on a Quick Attack, and then pray Rock Tomb connects. So I watch as Aerial Ace hits my monkey and he lives. Thank you, Rainbow. Rainbow is then able to land a gem boosted Rock Tomb for the KO. Wow, another stupidly close gym fight there, but we managed to get through it and win our 4th gym badge of the run. Winning our 4th gym badge means we get our next encounter, and of course, because Eliza's team, we're heavily weighed in our chances of getting our own Flying Rat. Of course, getting a Zebstrika would have been really cool, but fate decided no, and instead we get ourselves an Emolga. Thunder is a really great support Pokemon with access to Encore and Volt Switch, so Thunder should be a really useful, if not frail, member of our party. It's then time to head towards our 5th gym fight of the run. Just gotta get past our rival, beat up some kids, and then watch some grown-ass men hide inside a freezer. Remember kids, it's not gay if you're wearing matching outfits and the temperature is below freezing. Anyway, with that out of the way, we've now got to face the always scary Clay. And looking at my team, I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I'm slightly worried about this fight. I really don't have a direct Excadrill counter, so I'm gonna have to hope luck's on my side here. I start with Balance, and Clay starts with Krokorok. Now, I started with Balance here to take an Intimidate, but surprisingly, it looks like the Croc doesn't have Intimidate. Guess my docs were wrong for that one. That's not the end of the world though, because I still get my own Intimidate off with Balance. With Krokorok's attack lowered, I'm safe to switch into Plane, who takes a Torment. A single normal gem boosted return is then enough to get the KO on the Crocodile. Second is Palpitoad, and I can't go through a return here due to Torment, so I go through a Confuse Ray. Palpitoad then hurts himself in Confusion. I'm then able to get off a strong return as Palpitoad sets up an Aqua Ring. Clay then annoyingly heals with a Hyper Potion as I'm forced to go through a Dig. Dig connects, but it doesn't do a huge amount, allowing Palpitoad to get off the Bulldoze. Plane then has to take a second Bulldoze due to his speed being lowered, but another return is enough for the KO. Last is Excadrill, and again, this absolute monster has the real potential of wiping my entire team. I decide trying to Leech Seed this overgrown mole for some chip damage and recovery, so I switch into Rainbow. I've given Rainbow the Eviolite to make sure that he can survive at least a couple of hits here. On the switch, Excadrill goes for a Hone Claws, boosting this completely terrifying Pokemon's attack even further. Rainbow then takes a Rock Slide that luckily doesn't crit, allowing her to get off a Leech Seed. With Excadrill seeded, I then switch into Balance. Thankfully, an Intimidate brings Excadrill's attack back down to 0, meaning the Rock Slide Balance takes on the switch does less than half. Excadrill then lands a Slash that luckily doesn't crit as Balance goes through a Dig. Dig connects, and thanks to being boosted by a Ground Gem and the damage Excadrill has taken from Leech Seed, gets the KO. That could have gone a lot worse, but we managed to find our win condition fairly easily. That's the 5th gym badge acquired, 5th gym down. And with our 5th gym badge acquired, we can get ourselves our next Pokemon. And I don't have any preference at all here what I get. Give me Excadrill, give me Excadrill, give me Excadrill, give me Excadrill. I mean, that's exactly what I wanted. Okay, in all seriousness, while the Murder Mole would have been amazing, Cascade, the Palpitoad, should be useful thanks to his unique typing. Just gotta try and keep her alive as her defenses are hot garbage. Moving on from that though, we can make our way through Chargestone Cave, win another 2 rival fights like Like seriously, did they need to put a rival fight between every single gym? And then it's time for the 6th gym leader, Skyla. Now Skyla's gym seems to have been designed to give any challengers some sort of head injury, and giving her opponents a head injury is probably the only way Skyla ever actually wins any gym fights. Like her team in this game really isn't difficult, so let's jump right in. I start with Thunder, while Skyla starts with Swoobat. Swoobat surprisingly outspeeds and lands a weak heart stamp, which of course flinches. Good start. This hardly matters though, because on the following turn, Thunder wins the speed tie, and a gem boosted Volt Switch is then enough for the KO. I decide to send in Rainbow as Skyla sends in Unpheasant. Now, you might be confused why I chose to send in Rainbow here, who is obviously weak to this overgrown pigeon. Well, thanks to being weak to Unpheasant, I know Rainbow will bait a flying type move here, meaning I'm completely safe to switch back into Thunder. Thunder takes an Air Slash on the switch, and then is able to get another KO with a second Volt Switch. I can then do the exact same thing for Skyla's last Pokemon, so I switch into Rainbow, who baits a flying move from Swanana. I then switch into Thunder as Swanana sets up an Aqua Ring and then KO with another Volt Switch. Easy, that gym fight was a nice break from the rest during this run, and I managed to win with no issues, securing our 6th gym badge. You should all know what that means at this point. It's time for another encounter, and this time we get an overgrown pigeon of our own, Unpheasant. Now, I'd love to say that Zyther, the Unpheasant, is an absolutely amazing encounter that is essential for winning this entire run, but I'll be completely honest, she's pretty much a glorified taxi, carrying me around from one end of the region to the next. But I suppose at least she's got some use. With Skyla defeated, we get the joy of heading towards our next gym fight, and that means we get more easy rival fights. Woo! If you couldn't tell, these rival fights are starting to drive me a little bit crazy. But after Charon is put in his place for the 900th time, we get to make it to our next gym fight against Brycen, the Ice-type leader. Now, I don't have a direct counter against Brycen's Ice types, but I'm still going into this fight pretty confident. So let's start. I start with Plain, and Brycen starts with his Ice Cream Cone, Vanillish. Plain comes through like always, and one-shots the stupid Ice Cream Cone with a normal gem boosted return. Second is Beartick, and this is the most threatening Pokemon Brycen has. I decide to go for another return that does slightly less than half. Beartick strikes back with a Swagger, which means I could finish Beartick off right here if I can just break through Confusion. I decide I don't want to take the risk though, so I switch into Balance, who takes a weak Slash. Balance then lands another normal gem boosted return that annoyingly doesn't get the KO. Even more annoying is the fact that Beartick then goes for another Swagger, confusing Balance. I decide to take a risk on the next turn and go through a Rock Tomb as Brycen heals, and Balance breaks through the confusion, landing a Rock Tomb. Even with the attack boost from Swagger though, Rock Tomb does less than half. This bear is one chunky boy. I want to leave Balance and Plain as healthy as possible for Brycen's last Pokemon, but I don't want to take another risk with Confusion. Because of this, I decide to switch into Cascade, who takes an Icicle Crash that does slightly less than 50% thanks to the Eviolite that I've given her. Cascade then hits back with a Surf that very nearly KOs before having to take a Slash that luckily doesn't do too much. Annoyingly, Cascade puts Beartick just slow enough to where Brycen heals on the next turn as Cascade sets up an Aqua Ring. Now, on the next turn, I go through a Rain Dance. As I have it in my head, Rain Dance increases Aqua Ring's effectiveness. However, after Beartick misses an Icicle Crash, I can see that this isn't the case as Cascade's health increases by about the same amount as it did the previous turn. Oh well, the more you know, at least Cascade's water attacks now do more damage, as he's able to bring Beartick to slightly above half again with another Surf before being hit by another Icicle Crash. With Cascade so low, I decide to switch into Plain, who takes a Brine on the switch. Plain is then able to KO after 2 more returns, after taking another strong Icicle Crash. Right, the bear eventually went down, it only took 11 years. Last to Brycen is Claydol, who luckily is made out of paper, so I'm free to switch into Balance on a Reflect, bring the floating face into the red with a few more returns, switch into Forest, who luckily tanks an Aura Beam, and then KO with a final Leaf Blade. That was more difficult than I thought it would be. My Pokemon are really falling behind the power curve at this point. We still pulled through though, earning our 7th gym badge of the run. That means we get ourselves an Ice-type encounter. The wheel decides we're getting a Cryogonal. Now, Glacier the Cryogonal will be a super useful special wall that should really help out against the next gym leader, but my history with these things isn't great, so hopefully I can keep Glacier alive. We then head over to Dragon Spiral Tower to watch as one of our rivals ups his game slightly as N gets a legendary Fire Dragon. That seems like overkill when I had the Herdia, but I suppose he got sick of losing all the time. We then have to fight our way through hordes of Team Plasma Grunts, and I think it takes years off my life. Luckily, Bianca is always there in support, and we get to push her into the mud for one last time. It's time for our last gym fight against Iris. Now, Iris would usually be really scary, but thanks to Glacier, this should be a fairly straightforward fight. So I start with Glacier, and Iris starts with her mini Haxorus. I start the fight by setting up a hail, and the mini Haxorus goes for a Dragon Dance. This would often be scary, as this thing can now probably outspeed and one-shot Glacier, but luckily I know it will go for Dragon Tail here, which has negative priority. This means I'm completely safe to get off a 100% accurate Blizzard and get the KO. Second is Drugagon, who also goes down to a Blizzard. Third is Haxorus, who can outspeed but can't one-shot. That means I'm once again safe to go through a Blizzard as Haxorus gets off the Dragon Dance and get the final KO. That's the 8th and final gym leader taken down with no issues thanks to Glacier. As a reward for earning my final gym badge, I now get my final encounter for this run, and once again I have no preference at all who I get here. Gimme Haxorus, gimme Haxorus, gimme Haxorus, gimme Haxorus. Okay, well Drugagon is really strong, just not as game breaking as Haxorus. Oh well, Rising should still be one of the strongest members of our team. It's now time for the end game, so let's see who we're bringing. First up, we've got Balance, the ever-reliable Herdia. Second, we've got Forest, the graceful Leavanny. Third, we've got Thunder, the adorable Emolga. Fourth is Cascade, the paper-thin Palpitoad. Fifth is Glacier, the Tiki Mask Cryogonal. Last but not least, we've got Rising, the vicious Drugagon. Let's go win us a league, boys. Plane will be sitting this one out and going into early retirement, but he's earned a rest. If you want to wish me luck for this Pokemon League, remember to leave a like and subscribe for more content in the future. So with Generation 5's Pokemon League, you can battle them in any order, but to keep things simple, I go from left to right, meaning we're starting with Shauntal. So Shauntal starts with Cofagrigus, and I start with Rising. Rising immediately lands a Night Slash that does slightly less than half, and Cofagrigus hits back with a Shadow Ball that doesn't do too much. I then go through a Dragon Claw, which I'm hoping will do slightly less damage and not leave Cofagrigus in range to heal next turn. Of course, Dragon Claw does the opposite and leaves Cofagrigus with exactly enough HP where Shauntal will heal on the next turn. Cofagrigus then lands a Will-O-Wisp, but luckily I equipped Rising with a Rawsberry before the fight, so the burn is immediately cured. Shauntal then heals on the next turn, meaning it takes another 2 Night Slashes to bring the Cofagrigus back into the red, and then Shauntal heals again. God, this stupid coffin won't die. Luckily, Rising is eventually able to take down the Cofagrigus with another 3 Night Slashes, but the Ghost Coffin is able to bring Rising down to 19 HP. This basically means he's out for the rest of the fight, but at least he brought down the coffin. Next, the Shauntal is Golurk, so I immediately switch into Forest. On the switch, Forest takes a resisted Brick Break and then is able to set up a light screen while Golurk goes for a Curse. A single Leaf Blade on the following turn is then enough for the KO. Third for Shauntal is Chandelure, who would be a massive threat to my team. Luckily, Cascade with an Eviolite and with Light Screen up can tank any damage this monster can dish out, so I immediately switch into Cascade. On the switch, Cascade gets hit by a Fire Blast, but she's easily able to take down the Chandelure with 2 Surfs on the following turns, while tanking 2 Shadow Balls. Last for Shauntal is Jellicent, so I switch into Balance on a Brine that thanks to Intimidate doesn't do a huge amount. I then misclick and go through a Rock Tomb instead of Crunch, which doesn't do too much. Balance is then hit by a crazy strong Surf that very nearly KOs. I now have to risk a crit on Forest, as she's the only member of my team that can take a hit and then KO this overgrown jellyfish. So I switch, and luckily Jellicent doesn't get a crit on the Brine. This means Forest is able to finish off the Jellicent with a single Leaf Blade. That's Shauntal taken down, had to risk a few crits there, but overall that wasn't too difficult. Second for this Elite Four is Grimsley, who is often the easiest member of this Elite Four, so fingers crossed this goes well. I start with Rising, and Grimsley starts with Scrafty. I immediately go through a gem boosted Revenge, but annoyingly, Scrafty goes through a Sand attack, meaning Revenge's power isn't doubled, allowing Scrafty to survive. Scrafty then goes through a Crunch, which does next to nothing, and luckily, Rising lands a second Revenge despite the accuracy drop and is able to get the KO. Second is Crocodile, and this Croc is kinda scary, so gonna need a plan to take it out. I decide I want to lock her into Earthquake and then take her out with Glacier, so I switch into Balance on a Dragon Claw and then switch into Thunder on an Earthquake. Thunder is then able to get off an Encore, meaning Glacier can come in for 3 and get the KO with a single Ice Beam. Easy. Third is Bisharp, and I really don't have a clear answer for this thing. I decide my best bet is once again Encore, so I switch into Thunder on a Metal Claw. On the switch, I get lucky and Bisharp gets paralyzed thanks to Thunder's static. Bisharp is still a massive threat though, because locking it into Metal Claw means I'm risking attack boosts. However, I really don't see any other way out of this, so I go through an Encore as Bisharp lands another Metal Claw. I then go through a Volt switch and switch into Rising, and luckily Bisharp gets paralyzed. Rising then has to take one more Metal Claw that does get an attack boost scarily, but luckily Rising is then able to KO with a Revenge before that can become a major issue. Last is Lipard, so I switch into Thunder on a Fake Out. I can then Encore Lipard into Fake Out, safely switch into Forest, and then KO with a gem boosted X-Scissor. Second member of the Elite Four down. That fight was a lot harder than it usually was, but we still got through it with no real issues. Third for this Elite Four is Caitlyn, who has some pretty strong Pokemon, but with Night Slash on Rising and X-Scissor on Forest, I should be able to make short work of their team. So I start with Thunder, and Caitlyn starts with Renucleus. I start the fight by setting up a Light Screen, and even with Light Screen up, this overgrown ball of cells still hits really hard with a Psychic. Thunder tanks it though, meaning on the next turn, I'm free to Volt Switch into Rising, who takes another Psychic really well. Rising is then able to get off the Dark Gem boosted Night Slash, and annoyingly, the stupid Psychic type survives on what must be 1 HP. I swear this happens to me more often than anybody else. To make matters worse, Rising then has its special defense lowered by another Psychic. Caitlyn then heals on the following turn, and another Night Slash does slightly less than half. I then get extremely lucky with a crit, as another Night Slash gets the KO on the creepy Psychic Fetus. Second for Caitlyn is Sigilyph, who would be pretty scary for my team, but luckily I have Glacier, so I switch into Glacier on an Ice Beam that does next to nothing, and then Glacier has to take a strong Psychic. Luckily she takes the hit with no issues, and then is able to fire off an Ice Beam for the KO. Third is Gothitelle, who slightly worries me because it has Calm Mind. Because of this, I decide I need to set up Light Screen before switching, so I go through a Light Screen as Gothitelle goes through a weak Psychic. I then go through a Recover as Gothitelle goes for another Psychic, but luckily I've got Light Screen up, so it doesn't do too much damage, or that's what I would say if it didn't crit. Okay, that's annoying, but it just means I have to spend another turn healing, so I go through a second Recover as Gothitelle goes for another Psychic. I'm now tempted to switch at this point, but I'm pretty sure Light Screen is going to end soon, so I go through another Recover as Gothitelle goes for another Psychic. No idea why this thing isn't setting up, but I'm not going to complain. I then make a mistake and go through a Light Screen a turn early, as I think it's already ended, and Gothitelle finally goes through a Calm Mind. On the next turn, I do actually set up Light Screen again, and Gothitelle goes for another Calm Mind. Okay, need to take this thing out fast. So with Light Screen set up again, I switch into Forest as Gothitelle goes for a third Calm Mind. This thing is getting scary, but after getting off an X-Scissor that very nearly KOs, thankfully Forest survives a Psychic. That means it's just a case of landing one more X-Scissor that high rolls for the KO as Caitlyn heals. Last for Caitlyn is Musharna, so I switch into Balance as the floating Dream Pig sets up a Reflect. Thanks to Reflect, the gem boosted Crunch that Balance gets off on the following turn does next to nothing, and then Balance takes another Psychic that hits really hard. I decide I need Glacier to set up another Light Screen again, so I switch on another hard Psychic. I then set up another light screen while taking another psychic. I then spend a turn healing with Recover before getting the KO with 3 Ice Beams. That's the third member of the Elite Four taken down. Glacier coming in really clutch during that fight. Marshall and his fighting types are always super scary, and every single one of them has a rock move, so this is not going to be easy. Luckily, I can take advantage of the fact they all have a rock move with some clever switching, so let's see how this goes. So I start off with Balance, while Marshall starts off with Thor. Now because I started with Balance, I know the AI will probably either go through a fighting type move here as it's super effective, or Bulldoze because the AI hates being slower than you. This means I'm completely free to switch into Thunder. So I switch in on a Bulldoze, which Thunder is immune to, and then get off an Encore. This means Thunder is completely safe to get the KO with 3 Acrobatics. Second is Swak, and I know, again, that Marshall will never go through a fighting type move here, so I can switch into Balance. Annoyingly, Balance gets crit by a Stone Edge on the switch, meaning I can't keep switching as much as I would like for 3 Intimidate drops. Balance still survives though, meaning I can swap back into Thunder on a weak Karate Chop. I can then lock Swak into Karate Chop with an Encore, and then Volt Switch into Forest, who takes another weak Karate Chop. I want to save Forest's Flying Gem for later on in this fight, so I go through a Leaf Blade, and of course just misses the KO. Marshall then heals on the following turn, but Forest is able to pull through like always and get a crit with a Leaf Blade that Swak only survives thanks to Sturdy. A third Leaf Blade on the following turn is then enough for the KO. Third is Conkeldurr, so I switch into Balance as Thoris baits another rock move. Balance takes a Stone Edge, but very nearly goes down. With Balance on such low HP, I now have to risk Conkeldurr going for any of its moves, as it will see the KO with any of them. It's a risk I have to take though, so I switch into Thunder, and luckily Conkeldurr goes to Hammer Arm. Thank God, because that means Thunder can lock this ugly looking clown monster into Hammer Arm with Encore. I then Volt Switch into Forest. I decide I need to set up Reflect, so I go through a Reflect as Thoris takes another Hammer Arm. Thanks to spending a turn going through a Reflect, Encore ends. This is bad because I now have to hope and pray that Forest can take a Stone Edge here, so I go through a gem boosted Aerial Ace that very nearly KOs, and then watch as Conkeldurr lands a Stone Edge that luckily doesn't KO. Forest lives. That was a bit too close, but Forest survives and then is able to get the KO with the second Aerial Ace on the following turn. Last than Marshall is Mininshow. Now, most of my team that can handle this thing are nearly dead, but luckily, with Reflect set up, Rising should be able to handle this overgrown Meerkat. So I switch into Rising on a weak U-turn. Rising then gets hit by a weak jump kick before landing an Aerial Ace that brings Mininshow really low. Reflect then ends, but that's fine, as Rising has enough HP to survive another attack, and then KO with a second Aerial Ace. So I go through an Aerial Ace and take another jump kick, and get crit. Are you kidding? I was one attack away from getting through this Elite Four, and to make matters worse, Rising was vital for the final battles that are coming up. Rest in peace, Rising. You were taken from us too soon. With Rising down, Forest is able to come in and win us the battle with a final Aerial Ace. We've done it, the Elite Four is down, but I've really lost a key team member in losing Rising. I'm now in a really bad spot when it comes to dealing with Reshiram. Forget dealing with the rest of En's team or Getsis. I've spent a couple hours just trying to think of a plan here, and I think I've got something. No one on my team can survive 2 fusion flares from this legendary dragon, but with light screen up and using Recover, Glacier should be able to stall it out of fusion flares, meaning Glacier should be 3 to get the KO. So if I set up a light screen with Plane and then stall with Glacier, I should be able to handle the legendary dragon and then hopefully the rest of En's team. So let's see if I can pull off a win here. The whole run has come down to this. Can my team of lovable losers take down En and gets this? Let's find out. So I start off with Plane, and then En starts off with his legendary dragon, Reshiram. He really did upgrade his team slightly after being walked all over all game, didn't he? So I go through a light screen and Reshiram goes through a fusion flare. Again, Plane will survive this, unless I get crit. Are you kidding? Rest in peace, Plane. You were with us from the start, and you carried us through a lot of tougher fights. We're going to win this one for you. So as bad as that crit is, this is still kind of recoverable if I could just get a little bit lucky. I just have to slow down Reshiram here so Glacier can set up his own light screen before taking a hit. So I send in Cascade, who tanks an Exosensory, before landing a Bulldoze that lowers Reshiram's speed. I then switch into Glacier, who gets hit with a Hyper Beam, but that's perfect as now Glacier should be able to get off a light screen and heal before Reshiram can even move. So I go through a light screen as Reshiram has to recharge, I then outspeed and go through a recover on the following turn, bringing Glacier back to full HP. Reshiram then goes through a fusion flare, but that's fine because with light screen up, that should do around 50%, meaning I can just heal every turn until Reshiram runs out of PP and then KO. Or Reshiram will get a second crit, KOing Glacier. What absolute horse. That fight was always going to be an uphill battle, but thanks to getting 2 crits, it's ended before it's even really began. With Glacier down, even with light screen up and balance surviving long enough to get off a Thunder Wave, it's all over. Reshiram KOs every single one of my remaining Pokemon, one after the other, and even had I got stupidly lucky with Paralysis there, there's no way my 4 remaining Pokemon would have been enough to get through the rest of N's team and then gets this. So unfortunately, that's the end of the run. And what a run that was. Despite the ending, that was still extremely fun to play, and I hope everyone enjoyed watching as much as I enjoyed playing it. It's a shame about the ending, as I would have liked to have put up more of the fight, but sometimes in a game like Pokemon, RNG can screw you, and even if I'm a little salty, it's not the end of the world. If you enjoyed this video, remember to leave a like, and if you want to see more in the future, remember to hit that subscribe button. Again, thank you all so much for watching. It is massively appreciated. I'll see you all next time.